to the Ohio Ram Show.
Well, hello, I'm Jim Lawyer, and this is Ohio Ram Show 334, the show about ultracycling.
And I'm Lee Kreider, and show is brought to you by the good people who run the Race Across America time stations here in Ohio. Time Station 41 in Oxford, Ohio. Time Station 42 in Blanchester, 43 in Chillicothe, where Jim has got going down there in Chillicothe now. So we've got 3 time stations. Jim, one more to go.
Definitely. We'll get Athens soon.
Well, I will live with that promise. Hey, Jim, had some sad news. It looks like we've had our first cancellation for the 2021 racing season.
I saw that. Yes, definitely. A lot of still bad things going on around, and hopefully Ram will still go as forward as planned, you know?
Well, I hope that's the case. And you have changed. You were going to do Revolve 24, but you're now going to do the virtual World Time Trial. Is that correct?
That's correct. April and I are going to do that on December 5th and 6th, I believe is the date. We're going to try to do the 24-hour. No, we're actually doing individual.
Well, April kicked your butt. You know that.
I know. She's been riding 50-plus miles every night, averaging like 24 mile an hour. She's crazy.
Okay. We got to get April on here some night.
Definitely. We'll plan on that for the next time.
Yeah. Maybe during the World Time Trials.
Yes.
And I am going to try to get somebody for Revolve 24. Those of you who watch the show remember that last year we had Sabine Bird from Perth, Australia, report on the Revolve in England. Now that race happens both in England and Australia on auto race courses, I believe. Am I correct, Jim?
That is correct. I think that's on the virtual. They're doing 6 different courses this year.
Hey, Jim, what's coming up on the show around here?
Today we're talking to Gary Sullivan from the Laid Back Bike Report and Rob DeCou, who just did Uberman.
Okay, very good. Well, let's bring my old buddy Gary Sullivan in here. I'm laughing because Gary and I have to say, Gary is my mentor. Hi, Gary.
Oh, now that you're being too kind, Lee. Thank you. It's a great pleasure to be with you. And honestly, way second billing to Rob DeCou. Uberman does not describe me in any way. So it's great to be on with you. I look forward to the show.
And I don't think Gary knew till just now that you were going to be here.
No, it was kind of a last minute thing.
Yeah. And well, tell us about Laid Back Bike Report, because I've been watching that for some time. Like I said, you've been helpful to me so many ways.
And vice versa. Well, Lee, the Laid Back Bike Report is a live monthly webcast. It's similar to what we're doing right here. I've been doing it for about 5 years now, a little over. We cover all things recumbent bicycle oriented. So we do bikes, trikes, velomobiles, and then we do have a bit of crossover with the Ohio Ram Show, where we do a sports report and cover bike racing, as regards recumbent bike racing. So, of course, Rob has done a number of bike races on his Bachetta bike, and we cover Battle Mountain, where the fastest humans in the world race on a 5-mile course. We cover some of the same ultra racing events that you do as well, but we focus on the recumbent bike. So we do that. We cover the industry, the manufacturers and retailers. We go to events. We do some videos, YouTube videos where we've covered events. So we do lots of stuff. That's lots of fun. I have a panel just like you do here with Jim, and so we have lots of fun. And so I hope maybe some of our viewers who are interested in recumbents will tune in.
Yeah, well, I was going to say any kind of weird bike, but I thought I shouldn't say that. Except
No, it's
yesterday,
okay. I accept that. The weird
yesterday
people
on
riding
your
weird bikes
show,
was, yeah, that was going to be the name of the show actually until I changed it. So.
yesterday on the show, you explored this sense of weirdness, and I thought that was quite good. By the way, if you're interested in the Battle Mountain show, which I thought was quite good, I think a lot of people would be interested in what goes on there at Battle Mountain with the world human-powered vehicle trials. In the show notes for today's show at the OhioRamShow.com, you'll see a link to Gary's YouTube show. I'd highly recommend you go take a peek at it because that was quite interesting to see what they do there, Gary.
It was, Lee. Thank you. Yeah, we had a list of prominent riders, racers, some of the university teams. They come from all over the world to race to see who the fastest human is. Now, the fastest human as of right now actually is Todd Reichert from Toronto, and he and his University of Toronto team were there a couple of years ago. And Todd's record is 89.59 miles an hour, if you can believe it.
Wow.
This is on a flat in a fully faired streamliner, and just amazing stuff. So, yeah, if you guys want to tune in, I think Todd had a lot of interesting things to say. These bikes are fully enclosed. Just to give you an idea, I mean, fully enclosed. There's not even a window. They have a little stalk on the top of the bike on which is a camera. And so the riders just have a couple of, I think they have two monitors, one redundant, so that in case one goes out, they have it. And that's how they see where they're going, is on those monitors blasting down this road.
And it talks about the road, how they only have a few minutes to pull off these races, and they have to open it up again. Well, it was very interesting, I will say. But thanks a lot, Gary, for coming in here. I've been wanting to get you to pop in here from time to time, and Rob was the perfect person. So let's get on with the star of the show today, Rob DeCou. Rob, how are you?
Doing good. And Gary, it's nice to meet you in person.
It is nice to meet you. Well, I saw you in person once. You go ahead and talk to Lee. I'll tell you about that a little later on. You don't even know it, I think.
Well, okay. Well, listen, let me get my right thing here. Rob, you just finished the Uberman Triathlon.
Yeah, so less than a month ago.
And we were talking about before you got in here about how amazed we are. Would you just, for starters, describe what it is and what's involved in the?
Yeah, and that's exactly where you want to start. And I've done this a few times, and you kind of have to slow walk yourself through the mileage. It's kind of like Race Across America. Like, people can't get their head around it unless they're around Race Across America, because they think it's like this tour. And so Uberman, it starts with 21 miles. So it's a 21-mile swim from Oceanside, or from Catalina Island to Palos Verdes, followed by a 400-mile bike ride. So you go up the LA coast through Malibu to into Badwater Basin. It's about 20,000 feet of climbing. And then you do the Badwater 135. So you go up and over 3 passes, about 18,000 feet of climbing. And you end at the Mount Whitney portal. So just around 8,600 feet.
Okay. So, well, how'd that go for you?
It was brutal. It was, it went well. Like it didn't go as planned, but the way that it played out was just unbelievable. For me, like I started doing these, my first big breakthrough in ultras was Race Across America back in 2016. And I've learned so much about the mind and the body and the spirit and how to do crew and the different aspects correctly. And so for this one, because I've had all those years of experience, we were able to troubleshoot the things that came up and had a successful race.
Yeah, I'm not sure that link is right. I don't know where that one came from in there. I think it's
that's it. Yep, that's it.
Is that correct? Yeah.
That's
I know I copied and pasted. So, yeah. So if you want to learn more about it, you can there. So, okay. Well, I'm Gary. You got to earn your pay here, and you probably got a couple questions you'd like to ask.
you failed to talk about my pay before asking me on here. Now that I'm thinking about it, well, let's go on anyways. Rob,
he gets paid.
Yeah, I don't pay my guys either, so I'm not expecting anything. Rob, it is nice to see you. So let me ask, if I can, a couple questions. So you are riding Bachetta Carbonero, is that correct?
Yeah. I've been in touch with Mark Swanland from Bachetta. So I've been riding the Carbonero 3 for the last since last October. We did the Borrego Springs and then the Sebring 24-hour. And I think it was right after Sebring was when I really started kind of cranking miles on it.
Okay, and so, but you've been riding Bachetta. You're I was looking up what it was. So they call it. You're called a Bachetta brand ambassador. Is that what Mark and you have worked out? Is that?
Oh yeah. Yeah, so I
that?
started riding so I've done like 3 different cross country trips before I did Ram. The first one was like on a Sunrider, like small wheeled front. And then after that I ended up getting a Bachetta, I think it was like a Strada, and I just rode Bachettas for years. And then I rode on the cruise bikes for a little while, right before Race Across America, and then shifted back to some of the Bachettas. So I rode 2 different Bachettas for Race Across America. And then I tried the Pelso for a little while. I actually rode that on Borrego, and I had a weird thing happen to my roof rack where the whole roof rack came off and the whole brand new bike and everything went in the middle of the road. And so thankfully I was able to work some stuff out with Mark, who's the CEO of Bachetta. And, so we were able to replace that, and I got everything covered through insurance. And so, in the company side, it worked out well. But
that's Mark Swanson, who is the CEO. He's a good guy and often sponsored our show, so I appreciate it. I think maybe it would be helpful, Lee, if you'll give me another minute or two, since the Ohio Ram Show is not necessarily focused on recumbent bikes. Maybe for those who don't know, can you explain, Rob, why do you ride a recumbent bike on these ultra races and the Ironman stuff? What's the advantage of it? Why do you do it?
Yeah, so I got into recumbents. It was actually the first cross country trip I was getting ready to do, and I was riding standard bikes, and I'd had some tendonitis on my elbow. So as I started ramping up the mileage, it just got more and more swollen, and it got to the point where I couldn't sleep multiple nights in a row. And I did my first like 100-mile push, and then it was just and I realized like I'm just not going to be able to do this cross country trip. So I was trying to figure out a solution, and one of the old timers I trained was like, "Come ride with me on the recumbent." And I was like, I don't want to ride that. And he's like, no, just come for a ride. And so I did like a 50-mile ride with him. And I remember my muscles were like super sore, but everything else was fine. Like my neck didn't hurt, my butt didn't hurt, my elbow didn't swell up. And so I realized like, oh, I could do this. And so I ended up buying the cheapest model I could find and did that first cross country trip. And after that, it was so comfortable. After a while, I got my speed up. So I was like, oh, I could ride just as fast as I could on a standard bike. And so then I was like, why? I just don't understand why anyone would go back to a standard bike after riding miles on a recumbent. So I switched to it. So basically any race that allows recumbents, I'll ride. I actually shifted away from Ironman events because they don't allow recumbents. So that's why the ultra Ironman, some of them allow recumbents, some don't. And that was one of the main reasons for doing the Uberman. It's an open course, so you could ride whatever style bike you wanted. Where some of the Anvil courses, they don't allow, I keep petitioning them, but they won't allow anything except for the standard bikes.
That's awesome, Rob. So not only are you a Bachetta ambassador, you're actually a recumbent ambassador, because it's something we talk about in our show a lot, is the restrictions in various competitive races that don't allow recumbents. So hopefully we can kind of push those limits a little bit, and you're helpful on doing that. I will finish up if I have, is it okay, Lee, to show, Rob, I want to share with the audience our very first encounter that you've clearly already forgotten when I met you for the first time. So let me share my screen and share the audio and share this tab. And there we go. You want to put that up on the screen and I'll play it? Can you see that? Lee, you just share the
you want me to get it, Lee?
Yeah, go ahead.
There we go. All right, here we go.
So needless to say, he's going to be making a stop here. Yes.
This is it. This is the moment. I don't know why we're not getting the audio on this, but
Be careful.
We've
Ron.
got
Good
it on
luck to
mine.
you.
do you?
There you go.
There you go. And that was when you're riding for Maria and Jim on 3,000
Yep.
miles to a cure, right? For that. So,
Yeah.
all right, let me stop sharing my screen. So, anyways, yeah, that was
That's where I met you.
that was fun. That was great. I was down in that was Athens, Ohio, right by the Walmart down there, which is it's a mile and a half or so from my house. But it was great to meet you then. I've been following you ever since. We talk about you on the show all the time. So that's it for me, Lee. I'm out.
Well, they'll go away.
Well, hang on, sure.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the things I love about the recumbent community is, we were down at Sebring, and Jim and Maria Parker are just incredible. They have the cruise bike, and the Schlitters were down there. They have the Schlitter bikes, and that friendly competition between all the different brands. It was just so fun to be a part of that vibrant community, and I just love being a part of the recumbent.
It's a very small world in the recumbent world, and everyone's very friendly. Even the manufacturers, all it's competition, but it's friendly competition. If you go to the trade shows and that kind of thing, and I've been to Sebring a couple of times too. Great fun down there. So yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Well, I call ultra cycling, guys, a niche sport within a niche.
Yeah.
And I guess recumbents in ultra cycling are a niche within a niche within a niche, aren't you?
That's right. We are very big fishes in an extremely small pond.
Well, we've had the Parker Maria on several times, promoting 3,000 miles to a cure, which brings me to one of the things that Gary on the Ohio Ram Show we always try to get to is the wonderful charities that all of these people support, and it's always happily for us to share those charities with persons. So, Rob, will you tell us a little bit about your work with charities for human trafficking and what that's all about, and what your concerns are there?
Yeah. So the last 2 years I've been focused on raising money and awareness for the fight against human trafficking, and it was one of my really good friends that I come from a faith background, and he was the guy who shared his faith with me back in high school. He had just become the global trainer for this group called Hope 61. And I'd had some other friends that are in the fight against human trafficking. So I started just getting exposed to it on all these different levels. And that's one of the things I do in life. Like once you start getting these signals from the world, it's like, maybe I'm supposed to be involved with this. And so I ended up going to one of their trainings, spent 10 days in India, doing 4 trainings with local communities over there. And then just reaching out to different organizations that were, in the middle of that. So for this particular event, the Uberman, we were working with a LA-based charity called 1736. And then Hope 61 was our international charity. And then this group called In Our Backyard, which is based out of Bend, Oregon. And what they do is a lot of rescue work around major sporting events. So like the Super Bowls and different ones, which you don't even think about it, but that's where a lot of, trafficking takes place, in those big arenas. And, a lot of people come, they're out of their normal environment. They tend to do behaviors they're not engaged with normally. And one thing I found that, a lot of people don't know is just the massive volume of how big of a problem this is, and how it's in all of our communities. Like I grew up in a small town with about 20,000 people. And through this process, like I've been exposed to at least, I think of right now, 5 people that from here, like either they were involved or their siblings. And in that process of like, and just to, I want to talk about a dark subject just for a second, but basically what usually happens is not a lot what you see on TV, but it's someone who's younger, and all of a sudden they start getting pulled into drug culture, and then they get picked up by someone usually in the city, and they start stealing, and then they get pulled into prostitution, and then before you know it, that's their lifestyle. But we label it as prostitution, but when you start to think about it, they're like 11, 12, 13 years old, and that's not prostitution, that's child sex trafficking. And there's a lot of other trafficking that goes on, but that's one of the main ones that the groups I was engaged with were focusing on. And so for me, I try to stay out of the, I want to be as involved as possible, but being on the front line is hard. But it's asking like, what can I do, and who is my audience? What platform has the world given me, and how can I rally people around to make an impact and a difference. And so for me, like, I'm an ultra athlete. I love pushing my body, my mind. So this is a way to use my gifting as an athlete, and then also use the gifting that I learned a lot from the Parkers, like Jim and Maria Parker, on how to do some of the media, like pull people's attention to it. And so I view ultra athletes as it's just an event that we can draw people's attention to, and then we can magnify a cause that we care about. And so I think that's what I've kind of honed in since that first year with Race Across America is honing people's attention into an event that to focus on something you care about.
Yeah, well, I suppose I have to say I'm totally innocent when it comes to that's not going to come off right, is it, huh? I know very little about human trafficking. I've not been exposed to it. Gary told me, he's the one that drew me into live streaming, and he said, enjoy the chaos.
Yeah.
And so we're enjoying it tonight, Gary.
Yeah, I actually embrace it on my show. So that's
embrace. That's what he was told me.
You don't know what's going to happen. You know something.
Embrace the chaos.
Yeah,
and
I don't know what's coming out of my mouth half the time.
Yeah,
either,
I have a way of. My brain doesn't always kick in right, but I know very little about this. I've been told it happens right around here, but I think most of us live in a world, in a bubble that we don't know much about it. Well, the website is there, hope61.org. If you go to our show notes, ohioramshow.com, you'll see in the show notes there a link to that if you don't forget what it is. There'll also be a link there to Gary's show, and I already mentioned his Battle Mountain link is there. And so check that out in the show notes if you forget where that is at. I just went to the website today, and it's quite informative, Rob, and we thank you for what you're doing there.
Thank you.
So Jim was telling me, Jim, you've been quiet here. You got any questions?
Well, how many other people participated in Uberman this year, if there were any others?
Yeah, so the Uberman race started in 2015. I was the 7th official finisher. This year there was one other girl, Susan Hayes, I think is her name. She did a modified version, so she did the swim in a pool and then a little bit extra on the bike mileage. And then she ended up having some pretty bad blisters on the run, so she pulled up short. And then there was a relay team that broke the relay record by like 40 hours. So it was
wow.
Is it James Lawrence? He's the Iron Cowboy, the guy that did 50 Ironman, 50 state, 50 days.
Mm-hmm.
And then Catherine Breed was the swimmer. So she's like an Olympic level marathon swimmer. And then it was James's buddy Casey did the run. And they just crushed it. Like they were just dialed in. And, yeah, it was great to see them on the course. And then they just looked like they were having fun. And I just looked like a ram racer. I was just tired.
Excellent. Did you have any issues during the swim or the bike or the run of any consequence?
Oh my goodness. The swim, I never thought that anything would be harder than Race Across America. And this shouldn't have been, but because the swim, because I'm such a terrible swimmer, the swim was the worst 2 days of my life. So I started the swim, hit about 6 hours of choppy water, not bad water, like not dangerous or anything, but just enough where you can't get a steady stroke. So I tweaked my shoulder. And so then I'm swimming slower than normal. And then I was going so slow that usually it takes about, something like I should have been done in about 15 to 18 hours. And I was on pace to finish just over like 24. Mm-hmm. And then with about 5 miles to go, I swam pretty steady for about 3 hours straight. And I was able to get back in the boat for about 5 minutes every 3 hours. We'd take these little breaks. And I got in the boat for a second, and I could see everyone's face. And they were like, I was like, what's going on? And the boat captain was like, so over those 3 hours, you went forward 0.72 miles.
Oh my goodness.
So I'd hit a current that was pushing me out. So I'd kind of missed that window where I could go to shore. And I was having some throat issues where my throat was kind of compressing. So I could hear my pulse in my throat. And so I was having trouble breathing a little, not bad, but just enough to make note of. But with that, in conjunction with not being able to push the tide, we waited for an hour to see if it would shift. And then I went back in the water for about 10 minutes, looked up, and the captain was like, no. And so I got back in the boat, kind of called the swim at, 17 miles. Mm-hmm. The bike went pretty uneventful. Like the swim was so traumatizing that the bike was like the easiest, funnest 400 miles of my life. Just for a 400-mile ride.
Wow.
I fell asleep on the second day. So it was about 3 in the afternoon, and I started flagging, and I'd fallen asleep on a bike before, but I'd never crashed. And I was sitting there, and the next thing I know, I woke up about 6 to 12 inches off the ground, and you're like, oh, and it hit my hip and my knee, and I bonked my ankle. And so that was about probably 60 miles from the finish. So I got to the end and my ankle just started getting worse and worse. The rest seemed fine. So that night, like my ankle was sprained. So I didn't even know if I could run the next day. And, right before you get ready for a 135-mile run, which is it's a little less than 5, or it's 5 marathons plus some extra miles.
Right.
But I was like, when you do events like this, you start moving forward. And once you decide to move forward, you're not going to quit regardless unless there's a medical emergency. So it's like, once you kind of make that decision, the only thing left is to go forward.
Mm-hmm.
So I got out on the run course and I started walking, kind of hiking. And within about 2-3 miles, it was a low pain, like level 2 to 3, and it just kind of went away to pressure. So I was like, oh, good. It was like a lateral sprain, so it really didn't affect my walking. It was just swollen, but not, as long as it didn't affect my movement.
Mm-hmm.
So the run went pretty well. I had the guy who has the record for it, Adam Scully Powers, he paced me for like 3 days. So the 1 day on the bike and then 2 on the run. And Furnace Creek, it was about 105 going through. It was supposed to be 90s, but it was a little hotter, which is cooler than it is in summer, but it's still hot. I was fine there because I was bundled in ice, ice on the neck.
Mm-hmm.
But it was the third day when I was just coming to Lone Pine. And all of a sudden, I just started overheating. I could feel my pulse racing. And I was like, oh, crap. And so I talked to my crew, and they're like, the RV is about a mile and a half down the road. So I was like, okay, I can make it that far. Made it to the RV, and I was just, my pulse was probably 90 to 100. So I took a cold shower, turned on the AC. And then I wasn't tired. So I just called people for a few hours, and about an hour and a half into it, I could feel my pulse dropping down. So it's probably the closest I've gotten from heat exhaustion in my life. But thankfully I went down to normal, and it was coming into night. So from there, it was funny. I was talking to my buddy, Adrian, who's a postman, and he was like, in the post office, if you have heat exhaustion, you get sent home and you stay home for 3 days. My crazy buddy, Rob, he gets out and then he goes and walks the marathon. So I got out, finished the marathon, or finished the Badwater 135 just after 5 a.m. And it was on the bike the first day. It hit me. I was like, I bet you I could reach out to the race director, and I think he'd let me finish the swim. And I was like, I think I'm supposed to finish it. So during the run, I found out he wasn't coming out on the course. And so I grabbed one of my videographers and made like a little video and had my wife send it to him, basically just asking him my plan is to keep going, go to the top. And if I go straight down to LA, get on a boat and the first good tide and drop back in, will you let me finish? And, about 4 hours later, I got his message back and I had Adam read it. And he was like, absolutely, finish it out, go down. I'll be waiting on the shoreline. It'll be official. So that's what I did. I went back to the water, and it was only 4 miles, but and it took me a little over 4 hours, but it was literally the second hardest day of my life. And the reason is my body was so swollen from the whole experience. And then, over the week I'd slept about 15 hours. So I was really sleep deprived. And so I got into the water, and how I don't know, you can call it the 1,000-yard stare, or my Jamaica, my mechanic from Ram calls it hero's work. I used to call it bad time. But it's basically where your spirit or your kind of essence leaves your body. And I'd never experienced for so long. And what happens is you lose complete track of time. So you're, 5 minutes might as well be an hour or a week. You're just out there for eternity. So I spent about probably 2 hours out of that 4 hours, off in La La Land. And you don't change your stride at all. You're pretty steady, and so people around you don't notice much, but you notice. And so I, about halfway through that swim, I got back in the boat for a minute. And I took as much caffeine as I felt healthy I could get away with. So 3 cups of coffee, a Coke, 2 caffeine pills. So that kept me sane for about half an hour, and then you're off. So it was fascinating at the end because I got up on shore and I was still in that space where I wasn't quite there. And so I can still go back and watch the video, the Facebook video, and you can kind of see where I'm rambling a little. And then I'm like, okay, give me a second. And I take a deep breath, and, and it's like, okay, I'm there. And so just very powerful experience to go through. And kind of what we can do with our bodies and our minds if we have a goal and we just keep moving forward. And
That's amazing. Great job.
Hey, Rob, it's always great to have you on the show. You've been on here a couple times before, and we hope we'll have you on again. What's next for you?
That tends to be always the question. I'm planning on taking a couple of years to help some other people focus on some fundraisers and using kind of the skill sets I learned from the Parkers and others to highlight different fundraisers. I'm going to be focusing on some speed training. Me and a close friend are going to do a fast marathon next year. So I got about 10 months. So I'm doing that, but yeah, just taking a couple years to focus on my business and my kids, and just getting kind of recentered.
Okay, very good. Gary, Jim, got anything else you'd like to ask him?
No, I was it's just thinking about what you did, Rob. Is just amazing. You tell the story so beautifully, and the amazing charity that you work for. It tears at the heartstrings to know what people suffer from human trafficking. So good on you, pal. I'm a big admirer and fan of what you do and what you've done. So I'll keep watching you for sure.
Definitely, yes.
Thank you.
Well, we will. And you've been a good friend of the show. We appreciate that, Rob. Hey, Gary, it's so nice to have you on here. And
Lee, I'm a big fan of the Ohio Ram Show. So you ask anytime.
I got to share this story before we go. Gary did an introduction for me for the show a while back. And it took me a while to catch on. He said something about this show on animal husbandry.
Yeah. I wasn't clear exactly, what was going on in the Ohio Ram Show. I thought it had something to do with goats or something. I learned later on what Ram was. But
and that tells you a lot about Gary. Well, he's a Buckeye T. He lives over there. Was it Lithopolis?
No, in Pickerington, just outside of Columbus.
Pickerington.
We're not that far away.
There
you go.
Ohio dudes doing shows.
Yeah, I've ridden through Pickerington already, and
right.
On down to Lancaster, I remember. Any rate,
great riding.
So glad to have you here. Rob, thanks for being here with us and sharing about the Uberman. I think everybody shakes their head in amazement when they hear about it.
Yeah.
Jim, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Jim.
And don't nobody go away, but we're going to wrap this thing up along about right now.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
This is Gregory Zuber, thanking you for watching and sharing.
Music by Kevin MacLeod.